Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Always up for exploring something new.
Well, today we're ditching our trusty GPS and going old school.
Oh, you mean like using maps?
Even older school than that. We're talking natural navigation.
Finding your way using nature's clues. I love it.
Using the sun, stars, landmarks, even moss on trees,
Sounds like a challenge, especially in our tech-driven world.
right? We've got articles, survival guides, even some expert insights.
So we're going deep into how people navigated before smartphones.
Exactly. Because let's be honest, who hasn't panicked with a dead phone battery in the middle of nowhere?
Oh, totally. But beyond the survival aspect, I've always found natural navigation fascinating. It's like tapping into this ancient knowledge, connecting with nature on a deeper level.
Yeah, there's something almost magical about it, right? But I have to admit, part of me wonders, why bother? We have Google Maps, right? Why learn these old-fashioned techniques?
Well, for starters, technology isn't foolproof. Batteries die, signals drop, but the sun and stars are always there. Plus, like you said, there's a certain magic to it, that feeling of self-reliance, of understanding the language of nature. It's pretty powerful.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. It's like an extra layer of confidence knowing you're not completely dependent on technology.
Exactly. And, even figuring out which way to face in the shower to avoid the cold water is a form of natural navigation, according to Tristan Gooley.
Huh. I never thought of it that way, but I guess he's right. We are natural navigators in a sense.
We are, but we can definitely hone those skills and become more conscious of them.
So, where do we begin? What are the essential techniques?
Well, the sun is obviously a great place to start. It's our most reliable daytime guide. A lot of our sources talk about using its position and the shadows it casts to figure out direction.
Like that stick and shadow method.
Yeah.
Sounds super basic, but I bet there's more to it than just sticking a twig in the ground.
Oh, there's definitely a science to it. Ancient cultures knew that the sun's highest point in the sky is due south, at least in the northern hemisphere. By tracking how a shadow moves throughout the day, you can make a pretty accurate compass.
Wait, hold on. So you're saying I can make a compass just by watching a shadow?
Pretty much, and it highlights a key principle. Natural navigation is all about observation. Paying close attention to how the sun moves gives you that frame of reference for east and west, too.
Okay, so if I'm lost in the woods, I can find my way out just by watching the shadows.
It's a good starting point. Combined with other observations, it can be very effective. There's also that simpler hand as a guide technique that a few sources mention.
Oh yeah, what's that one?
This one's almost too easy. You point your thumb towards the sun, and wherever your pinky points, that's roughly south. Not perfect, but a quick way to get a general sense of direction.
Wow, I'm definitely trying that later. It's amazing how much our ancestors knew about reading the signs of nature.
It really is. And, as the manual points out, these techniques force you to slow down, put the phone away, and really connect with your surroundings. It's almost meditative.
I like that. So it's not just about finding your way, but about being more present in the moment.
Exactly. It's about reawakening those innate skills we've kind of lost touch with.
Okay, so we've got the sun covered. What about navigating at night? Can you actually find your way using the stars?
Oh, absolutely. Sailors did it for centuries, crossing entire oceans just by looking at the stars. And you don't need fancy equipment to start.
So what do I look for? Are there specific stars that act like guideposts?
There are. In the northern hemisphere, the big one is Polaris, the North Star. If you find it, you know you're facing north.
I've heard of Polaris, but how do you actually find it?
Well, first you got to find Ursa Major, the Big Dipper. You know that one,
The
right?
Big Dipper, yeah. It looks like a giant ladle in the sky.
Right. Imagine a line connecting the two stars at the edge of the Dipper's bowl. Extend that line upwards, about 5 times the distance between those stars, and boom, you hit Polaris.
So find the Big Dipper, find the North Star, and I know where north is. Mind blown.
Pretty cool, right? And from there, you can figure out east, west, and south.
This is way more interesting than I thought it would be. What about the Southern Hemisphere? Do they have a South Star?
Not a single star, but they have the Southern Cross. It's shaped like, well, a cross.
Okay, so I'm in Australia, gazing at the stars. How does the Southern Cross help me?
It's a little trickier than Polaris. You have to imagine a line extending down from the longer arm of the cross, about 4.5 times its length. That point in the sky is roughly south.
So I'm drawing an imaginary line. Got it. Is that all there is to it?
Ideally, you'd want to double check with another reference point, but that's the basic idea.
Got it. The stars are our friends, even when we're lost. What else can we use for navigation?
Well, besides the sun and stars, nature offers a bunch of other clues. Things like how trees grow, the presence of moss, even how snow builds up. They can all give you hints about direction.
Wait, seriously? You can tell direction from moss and snow?
It's all about observation, remember? Let's start with moss. Ever heard that it grows more on the north side of trees in the northern hemisphere?
Yeah, I've heard that, but why? Does moss have some kind of internal compass?
Nope. It's all about sunlight and moisture. In the northern hemisphere, the north side of a tree gets less sun, making it cooler and damper.
Ah, so the moss prefers the shade and moisture. That makes sense. So if I see a mossy tree, the mossy side is probably facing north.
You got it. It's not foolproof, but it's a good example of how paying attention to those small details can be helpful. Now, about snow.
Okay, what about snow? How does that help?
Well, think about it. Have you ever noticed that snow melts faster on one side of a tree or building?
Now that you mention it, yeah. But I never thought about why.
It's the angle of the sun again. The south side gets more direct sunlight, so the snow melts faster there.
So the side with less snow is probably facing south. Another handy tip. It's like nature's giving us all these clues if we just know how to look for them.
Precisely. And the more you learn, the more interconnected everything seems.
This is blowing my mind. Okay, so
Yeah.
sun, stars, moss, snow. Any other navigation tricks up your sleeve?
Let's talk about one of the most important skills. Mental mapping.
Mental mapping. What's that all about?
It's building your observation skills and creating a picture of the landscape in your mind, like an internal GPS.
I like that. Sounds way more reliable than my phone. But doesn't everyone already do that when they walk around?
To an extent, yes. But most of us aren't doing it consciously. 12 Easy Ways talks about the general awareness method. It's all about paying attention to landmarks, noticing changes in the terrain, and constantly checking your sense of direction.
So it's like being more mindful, not just zoning out on autopilot.
Exactly. And here's a fun exercise that shows how important mental mapping is. Try walking in a straight line without looking at your phone or anything for reference.
Wait, seriously, just walk straight. That sounds easy.
You'd be surprised how many people struggle with it.
Well-
Turns out most of us naturally drift to one side when we walk.
Really? Why is that? Is one leg longer than the other or something?
Nope, it's our brains. They're constantly making tiny adjustments based on what our senses are telling us.
Interesting. So without paying attention, we could end up walking in circles. Kind of funny, actually.
It is, but it also shows why having a good sense of direction matters. Without a mental map of where you are and where you're going, you're much more likely to get lost.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all this fits together. Observation, spatial awareness, knowing how to read nature's signs. It's like a mental workout for your inner explorer.
You got it. And like any workout, it gets easier and more intuitive with practice. You start to see the world differently, noticing patterns you never saw before.
So where do we go from here? What are the next steps on our natural navigation journey?
Well, now that we've covered the basics, let's talk about how all these skills can work together in a more integrated way.
Sounds good to me. Lead the way. All right, so we've learned about tracking the sun, finding Polaris, even using moss to get our bearings. But how do we put it all together?
One cool concept is triangulation, using multiple reference points to figure out your location. It's like, imagine you're in a field, right? And you see a mountain off in the distance, and you know it's generally to the west.
Okay, I see. I've got the mountain in the west. Then what?
Then you spot a river that you know flows north. By connecting those landmarks to your position, you've created a triangle.
So I've got me, the mountain, and the river forming a triangle, and that helps me figure out where I am on a map.
Exactly. The more landmarks you can identify and their directions, the more accurate your mental map becomes. And that's where observation and mental mapping really come in. It's not just seeing things, it's about actively noting their position and how they relate to each other.
That makes sense. It's like building a puzzle in your mind. But what if I'm in a place with no obvious landmarks, like just endless trees?
Well, that's when those subtle clues come in handy. Remember how we talked about moss growing on the north side of trees? Even in a dense forest, that can give you some sense of direction. You can also look at how branches grow thicker on the south side because they get more sunlight.
Right. So even without big landmarks, I can use those smaller clues to get a sense of where I am. It's amazing how much nature is telling us if we just pay attention.
It really is. And don't forget the sun. Even if it's cloudy, you can often sense its general direction, which can keep you moving the right way.
So we've got all these cool natural navigation tools. But what about our good old map and compass? Do we still need those?
Absolutely. Think of natural navigation and map and compass skills like two parts of the same system. They work together.
How so?
Okay, say you're hiking and you hit a fork in the trail. Your map shows both paths, but you're not sure which way to go. By using the sun or other natural cues to figure out your general direction, you can then look at the map and choose the right path.
So natural navigation helps me interpret the map and make a better decision.
Got it. But what if the weather turns bad, like thick fog or heavy rain?
That's when your compass really shines. A compass will always point north no matter what the weather's doing. And when you combine that with a good topographic map, you've got a powerful tool for navigating even in tough conditions.
So we're not saying ditch the compass and map altogether. It's more about adding natural navigation skills to make you a better, more confident explorer.
Exactly. It's about having multiple layers of knowledge so you're not completely reliant on any one thing.
Okay, I'm convinced. Natural navigation is way cooler and more useful than I thought. It's like a hidden superpower we all have. It is. And remember, it's not just about the practical skills. It's about cultivating that connection with nature. By learning to read its signs, we gain a sense of place, of belonging. We become more mindful of our surroundings.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's not just about getting from A to B, it's about the journey itself and the connection we make with the world around us.
Absolutely. It's about slowing down, paying attention, and appreciating the beauty of the natural world.
I love that. So for someone who's just starting out with all this, what are some good first steps?
Start small. Don't try to learn everything at once. Pick one technique, like that hand as a guide method for finding south, and practice it whenever you can.
Right. Make it part of your daily routine. Instead of always checking your phone for directions, try using the sun or landmarks to orient yourself.
Exactly. Another good exercise is to pick a small area, like your backyard or a park, and create a mental map of it.
So I'd walk around noticing landmarks, changes in elevation, anything that stands out.
Right. Notice where the sun is at different times, where the moss grows on the trees, even which way the wind is blowing.
And then I'd try to draw that map from memory to see how well I paid attention. That sounds like a fun challenge.
It is. And as you get better, you can gradually expand the area you're mapping. You can even try mapping a route you travel often, like your commute or a favorite hiking trail.
So we're training our brains to be more spatially aware.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the more confident you'll become in your ability to navigate without always relying on technology.
This is all so fascinating. I'm inspired to put my phone away and tap into my inner explorer. But I have to admit, I'm still a little intimidated by the idea of navigating by the stars. It seems so complicated.
I get it, it can seem daunting. But remember, even experienced sailors had to start with the basics. Start by learning those key constellations, like the Big Dipper and the Southern Cross.
Right. And once I know those, I can use them to find Polaris, or the point in the sky where south lies.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to use resources like star charts or apps to help you learn. There are some great apps that show you exactly where the constellations are in the sky.
So technology can be a helpful tool even when we're trying to learn how to navigate without it.
It's all about finding a balance. Technology can help us learn and practice, but ultimately we want to build the confidence to navigate using our own skills.
I agree. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the basic techniques to mental mapping to how our map and compass can be used in conjunction with these natural navigation skills. What are some key things you want our listeners to take away from all this?
First and foremost, I want them to know that natural navigation is a skill anyone can learn. It's not just for survival experts, it's for anyone who wants to feel more connected to nature and more confident finding their way.
Totally agree. It's about rediscovering those innate human abilities we've forgotten about in this age of GPS.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about abandoning technology completely. It's about having more tools in your toolkit so you're not always relying on just one.
It's like having a backup plan, right? So you're never totally stuck.
Perfect analogy. And lastly, I want to emphasize that natural navigation is more than just a practical skill. It's about connecting with nature, appreciating the beauty and interconnectedness of the world.
Beautifully put. It's about slowing down, paying attention, and learning to speak the language of the natural world.
Exactly. So get out there, explore, observe, and most importantly, trust your instincts. You might be surprised what you discover about yourself and the world around you.
You know, talking about all this, it strikes me that natural navigation is kind of like learning a new language.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, at first, it all seems foreign and confusing. But with practice, you start to pick up the patterns, the logic behind it all.
That's a great analogy. Just like with language, becoming fluent in natural navigation takes time and effort.
Exactly. It's about immersing yourself in that world, paying attention to the details most people miss.
Right. And just like learning a language opens up new cultures and experiences, mastering natural navigation opens up a whole new way of experiencing the outdoors.
Totally. You go from just passing through a landscape to really becoming a part of it.
Yes. You're noticing things, making connections, feeling a sense of place. It's amazing.
So how do we encourage that active participation? How do we go from just observing to really engaging with our surroundings?
One way is to challenge ourselves, to create little thought experiments during our
Ooh,
adventures.
I like that. Give me an example.
Okay, picture this. You're hiking in a deep canyon, and the sun's completely blocked by the cliffs. What other natural navigation techniques could you use to figure out where you are?
Okay, let me think. So no sun, which means no hand as a guide trick. Could I use the wind? I know canyons can create some pretty unique wind patterns.
Exactly. Wind can be a really valuable clue, especially in areas with consistent wind patterns. What else?
Well, I definitely look for any signs of water. Water always flows downhill, right? So if I find a stream or a creek, I could follow it, knowing it'll eventually lead me out of the canyon.
Now you're thinking like a natural navigator.
This is fun. Okay, give me another one.
All right. You're in a thick forest, and you want to avoid walking in circles. How could you use natural features to create a sort of mental breadcrumb trail?
That's a good one. Okay, I could use certain trees as markers. If I see a tree with a really weird shape or a distinctive branch, I could make a mental note of its position and direction.
Excellent strategy. What else could you use?
Well, if there were any rocky outcrops or changes in elevation, those could be helpful reference points too. It's all about creating those mental snapshots to help me remember where I've been.
Exactly. And don't forget your senses. Feel the bark on different sides of the trees. Notice how the sunlight filters through the leaves. The more you engage your senses, the richer your mental map becomes.
This is making me realize how much I've been missing by relying so much on my phone for directions. It's like I've been blind to all these incredible details.
I know what you mean. And think about how much more satisfying it is to find your way using your own skills. It's a sense of accomplishment you just don't get from following a dot on a screen.
For sure. Okay, so we've talked about challenges and exercises. What other advice do you have for people who want to get better at natural navigation?
Don't be afraid to mess up. Natural navigation is all about learning by doing. You're going to make mistakes, but that's how you learn and get better.
That's right. It's all part of the journey.
Exactly. And remember, there's no one right way to do it. It's about finding what works for you, combining different techniques, and adapting to the environment you're in.
So it's really a personalized skill set. That's cool.
It is. And don't underestimate the power of sharing your knowledge with others. Teach your friends and family what you've learned. Go exploring together and see who can find their way using only natural navigation.
What a great idea. Makes it more fun and helps solidify those skills.
Definitely. Natural navigation is something that can bring people together and create some amazing memories.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything in this awesome deep dive into the world of natural navigation. From using the sun and stars to understanding the subtle signs in the landscape, it's all about connecting with that inner compass.
And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to explore. We encourage everyone to check out the sources we mentioned. Many of them have hands-on activities and tips for practicing these skills in your own backyard.
So get out there, explore, observe, and most importantly, trust your instincts. You might be surprised what you discover about the world and yourself along the way.
Happy navigating, everyone!